The massive white rhino stands perfectly still. Its ancient eyes locked onto Marcus Thompson's. Blood trickles from a tranquilizer dart wound on its flank, and the sound of approaching poachers' vehicles grows louder through the African bush. Marcus has just cut the snares from the magnificent beast's legs, saving it from certain death. Then another. Marcus's heart hammers against his ribs as the rhino's massive head lowers toward him. Every instinct screams at him to run, but his boots feel glued to the red earth. What happens in the next 30 seconds will change everything. Marcus thought he knew about these prehistoric giants and create a bond that defies every rule of the wild. This isn't just another rescue story. This is the moment when a battle-hardened conservationist discovers that sometimes the most dangerous animals in Africa can show the most profound gratitude. Marcus Thompson had been tracking poachers across the Limpopo province for the better part of 15 years, a former Australian Army Ranger who'd traded the beaches of Queensland for the unforgiving bushveld of South Africa. He'd seen enough wildlife crime to fill a dozen nightmares, but at 43, with weathered hands and sun-carved lines around his green eyes, Marcus knew this land like his own backyard. The morning air hung thick with the scent of acacia flowers and red dust. Temperatures were already climbing past 30 degrees, and it wasn't even 9 o'clock. Marcus adjusted his wide-brimmed hat and squinted through his binoculars at the game trail below. The Kruger National Park stretched endlessly in every direction, a tapestry of golden grass, thorny trees. "Marcus, we've got movement about 3 clicks north of your position. Looks like they're setting up for something big." Sarah Chen, his partner in the anti-poaching unit, never sugarcoated the situation, a marine biologist from Brisbane who'd found her calling in terrestrial conservation. She coordinated their operations from base camp with military precision. Together, they'd intercepted over 200 poaching attempts, but the criminals were getting bolder and more desperate. Marcus studied the landscape through his field glasses. The drought had been particularly harsh this year, driving wildlife toward the few remaining water sources, perfect hunting grounds for those who traded in ivory, rhino horn, and pangolin scales. He could smell the faint musk of elephants on the wind, mixed with the earthy aroma of impala droppings and the metallic temps of dust. "Copy that, Sarah. I can see vehicle tracks heading toward the old waterhole. Fresh ones." The tracks told a story Marcus had read too many times before. Heavy tires carrying expensive equipment, moving at night to avoid detection. These weren't desperate locals trying to feed their families. These were professional syndicates with military-grade weapons and enough money to corrupt officials across 3 countries. Marcus secured his pack and began moving through the thorny undergrowth. His boots crushed dry leaves with each step, releasing the sharp scent of crushed vegetation. Somewhere ahead, an animal was in mortal danger, and every second counted. The gunshot echoed across the valley like a thunderclap, sending a flock of red-billed quellias exploding from a nearby marula tree. Marcus froze, his blood turning to ice water. That wasn't a rifle shot. It was the distinctive crack of a dart gun. He broke into a run, crashing through wet-a-bit thorns that tore at his sleeves and scratched bloody lines across his forearms. The acrid smell of gunpowder hung in the still air, mixing with the sweet fragrance of wild jasmine and the earthier scent of disturbed soil. 300 meters ahead, Marcus spotted them. 4 men in military fatigues clustered around something large and gray. His heart sank as he recognized the distinctive bulk of a white rhinoceros lying motionless on its side. Steam rose from the animal's massive flank in the morning heat. Through his binoculars, Marcus could see the awful efficiency of their operation. One man held a chainsaw, its chrome surface glinting in the dappled sunlight. Another knelt beside, the rhino's head measuring the horn with calloused hands. The third kept watch, while the fourth, clearly the leader, barked orders in a mixture of Portuguese and broken English. Marcus's throat constricted. The rhino was still breathing. He could see the gentle rise and fall of its barrel chest, the occasional twitch of its rounded ears. This magnificent creature, older than most trees in the park, was conscious but paralyzed. Aware of everything happening around it, the conservationist's hands trembled with rage as he reached for his satellite phone. But before he could dial, he noticed something that made his blood freeze. Wire snares had been wrapped around the rhino's back legs, cutting deep into the thick hide. Dark blood pooled in the red earth beneath the wounds. This animal had been suffering for hours, maybe days, before the poachers found it. A twig snapped. Behind him, Marcus spun around to see the barrel of an AK-47 pointed directly at his chest. A fifth poacher had been watching the perimeter, and Marcus had walked straight into his trap. "Drop the phone, Mizungu," the man said in heavily accented English. His eyes were flat and cold like a shark's. "You shouldn't have come here." Marcus raised his hand slowly, his mind racing. The rhino's labored breathing seemed to fill the silence between them. In the distance, he could hear the chainsaw starting up. "Please," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady despite the rifle trained on his chest. "The animal is suffering. Let me help it, then I'll go. You have my word." The poacher laughed, a harsh sound that sent a pair of ground hornbills scuttling away through the undergrowth. "Your word means nothing here, white man. This is our business now." The chainsaw's roar grew louder, and Marcus could see the leader gesturing impatiently toward the rhino's horn. The animal's eye, ancient, intelligent, and filled with incomprehensible pain, stared directly at Marcus. It knew, somehow, impossibly, it understood what was about to happen. Marcus had seen enough wildlife crime scenes to know exactly how this would end. The horn would be removed while the rhino was still alive, still conscious. Death would come slowly, from blood loss and shock. The carcass would be left for the hyenas and vultures, another casualty in humanity's greed. That animal is worth more alive than dead. Marcus tried again, sweat beading on his forehead despite the rifle pointed at him. "The tourism revenue, alone 5 million rand, the poacher interrupted, his finger moving to the trigger. "That's what the horn will bring in Hanoi. Tourism brings us nothing but hungry children and empty promises." The smell of diesel fuel and hot metal drifted on the morning breeze as the chainsaw revved higher. Marcus could see the leader kneeling beside the rhino's massive head, positioning the saw near the base of its horn. The animal's eye rolled desperately, trying to focus on the approaching blade. In that moment, Marcus made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He lunged sideways, using his shoulder to knock the rifle barrel aside, just as the poacher pulled the trigger. The shot went wide, shattering the bark of a nearby leadwood tree. Marcus rolled behind a termite mound as shouts erupted from the poaching team. He could hear boots pounding across the hard earth, voices calling out positions in rapid Portuguese. The chainsaw shut off abruptly. Adrenaline flooded his system, sharpening every sense. He could smell his own fierce sweat mixing with the dusty metallic scent of the termite mound. His radio had been knocked loose in the struggle and lay crackling in the dirt 10 meters away. Too far to reach without exposing himself to gunfire, the rhino made a sound Marcus had never heard before. A low, rumbling groan that seemed to come from deep within its massive chest. Marcus peered around the edge of the termite mound. The poachers had spread out, moving to flank his position. Professional hunters who knew exactly how to corner their prey, he had maybe 30 seconds before they had him surrounded completely. Broke cover and sprinted toward the rhino, zigzagging between acacia trees as bullets whistled past his head. Bark exploded from tree trunks around him, filling the air with splinters and the sharp scent of sap. His boots pounded against the sun-baked earth, each step bringing him closer to almost certain death. But he couldn't abandon the animal. Not now. Not after looking into those ancient, knowing eyes. He dove behind the rhino's massive body, just as another volley of shots rang out. The bullets thumped harmlessly into the hard earth beyond them. Up close, the animal was even more magnificent than he'd imagined. Its hide was like armored leather, scarred by decades of territorial battles and thorn scratches. The horn, the object of so much human greed, rose from its snout like a perfect natural sculpture. Marcus pulled out his bush knife and went to work on the wire snares. The metal had cut deep into the rhino's legs, and fresh blood welled up as he cut each strand. The animal flinched with each movement, its massive muscles trembling beneath the skin. "Easy, mate," Marcus whispered, using the same tone he'd once used to calm injured soldiers. "I've got you. Just hang on. The poachers. We're closing in." He could hear their voices getting nearer, coordinating their approach. But as Marcus cut through the last strand of wire, something extraordinary happened. The rhino's eye focused on him with startling clarity. Despite the tranquilizer coursing through its system, despite the pain and fear, the animal seemed to understand exactly what was happening. Its breathing steadied, and the wild thrashing stopped completely. Marcus had spent his entire career studying animal behavior, but he'd never witnessed anything like this. The rhino was choosing to trust him. A prey animal, drugged and terrified, was making a conscious decision to remain calm while a human worked to free it. "That's it," Marcus breathed, cutting away the last of the snares. "There you go, beautiful." The rhino made that same rumbling sound again, but softer now, almost like a cat's purr. If cats weighed 2 tons and carried medieval weaponry on their faces, its massive head shifted slightly, bringing its eye into perfect alignment with Marcus's face. A shot cracked overhead, closer this time. The poachers had him surrounded, and there was nowhere left to run. Marcus pressed himself against the rhino's flank, feeling the steady rhythm of its heartbeat through the thick hide. "Throw out your weapon," the leader shouted in English. "Come out now, or we kill you both." Marcus looked into the rhino's eye one more time. In its dark depths, he saw something that defied every textbook he'd ever read about animal cognition. Not just intelligence, but genuine gratitude. The ancient creature knew it had been saved, and it was choosing to stay calm despite everything its instincts screamed at it to do. The effect of the tranquilizer was wearing off faster than the poachers had anticipated. Marcus could feel the rhino's muscles tensing beneath its hide, strength flowing back into limbs that had been paralyzed just minutes before. But instead of the explosive panic he expected, the animal remained perfectly still. "Last warning," the poacher leader shouted. Marcus could see his shadow moving between the trees, positioning for a clear shot. The rhino's eye blinked slowly, deliberately. Then, with movements so careful they seemed choreographed, the massive animal began to stand. 2 tons of prehistoric power rose from the red earth like a mountain coming to life. Marcus scrambled backward, expecting the animal to bolt for the safety of the bush. Instead, the rhino turned to face him, for a heartbeat that lasted an eternity. Man and beast stared at each other across an evolutionary gulf of millions of years. The rhino's horn, still bloody from where the chainsaw had nicked it, caught the morning light like polished ivory. Its small, intelligent eyes held Marcus's gaze with an intensity that made his chest tight. Then the rhino did something that would be talked about in conservation circles for decades to come. It stepped forward and gently pressed its massive head against Marcus's chest. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender, that Marcus nearly lost his balance. The rhino's skin felt like warm leather against his hands, and he could smell the earthy musk of its hide mixed with the metallic scent of blood from its wounds. The animal's breathing had settled into a steady rhythm, and Marcus realized with wonder that it was completely calm. "What the bloody hell?" came a voice from behind the trees. The poachers had stopped their advance, clearly as stunned as Marcus by what they were witnessing. In 15 years of illegal hunting, they'd never seen anything like this. Rhinos were supposed to be aggressive, unpredictable. They charged at vehicles, fought each other over territory, and generally wanted nothing to do with humans. This one was nuzzling a conservation officer like a giant, armored puppy. The moment stretched on, filled with the sound of cicadas and the distant call of a fish eagle. Marcus could feel the rhino's heartbeat through his shirt, strong and steady. The animal's eye, so close now he could see his own reflection in it, blinked slowly again. "Thank you," Marcus whispered, knowing the words were inadequate but unable to stop himself. "Thank you for trusting me." The rhino rumbled again, that same deep purr that seemed to vibrate through Marcus's entire body. Then, with the same deliberate care, it stepped back and turned to face the poachers who had been trying to murder it just minutes before. Next would be debated by animal behaviorists for years afterward. The rhino, now fully recovered from the tranquilizer, looked directly at each poacher in turn. Its posture was unmistakably protective, not aggressive, but firmly planted between Marcus and the men with guns. The poacher leader's hands shook as he tried to line up a shot on the massive animal, but something in the rhino stance, in the way it held its head high and horn forward, made him hesitate. This wasn't the behavior of a prey animal anymore. This was something else entirely. "Shoot!" One of the other men hissed in Portuguese, "Shoot them both." But the leader seemed frozen, his rifle wavering between Marcus and the rhino. In the distance, the sound of approaching helicopters began to build. Sarah and the anti-poaching unit had been monitoring Marcus's position and were closing in fast. The rhino took one step forward, then another. Each movement was measured, deliberate. Its massive hooves left perfect impressions in the red earth as it advanced on the poachers with the slow inevitability of a landslide. That broke the spell. The men scattered like leaves in a windstorm, crashing through the undergrowth toward their vehicles. The leader fired one wild shot over his shoulder, but it went wide by meters. Within seconds, the forest was quiet, except for the growing thunder of helicopter rotors. Marcus sank to his knees, adrenaline leaving his system so fast he felt dizzy. The rhino watched the poachers disappear, then turned back to him with what could only be described as satisfaction in its dark eyes. 3 helicopters appeared above the tree line, kicking up clouds of dust and dry leaves. Sarah's voice crackled. From the dropped radio, Marcus, come in. We've got visual on the poachers' vehicles. Are you all right? The rhino stepped carefully around Marcus to nose at the radio, its horn just centimeters from the device. For a moment, it seemed like the animal might try to answer Sarah itself. "I'm here," Marcus managed to say, reaching for the radio. "I'm fine. The rhino is fine. The bastards got away. But, Sarah, you're not going to believe what just happened." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same spot where his life had changed forever. The wire snares had been replaced by a small memorial plaque, donated by wildlife organizations around the world. The story had gone viral within days of the rescue, inspiring donation drives that raised over $2 million for anti-poaching efforts across Africa. But the real miracle was still happening. The rhino, nicknamed Guardian by the international media, had never left the area. Park rangers reported regular sightings of the massive bull patrolling the waterhole where Marcus had saved him. More incredibly, Guardian seemed to have appointed himself as an unofficial protector of other animals in distress. 3 separate rescue operations had been assisted by the rhino's presence. A young elephant trapped in mud, a buffalo cow with an infected wound, and even a lost tourist who'd wandered off the designated paths, all had been found in Guardian's protective company, safe and unharmed. Dr. Rebecca Walsh, a leading animal behaviorist from Sydney University, who'd flown to South Africa specifically to study Guardian, stood beside Marcus with her notebook full of observations that challenged everything the scientific community thought they knew about rhino intelligence. "It's unprecedented," she said, watching through binoculars as Guardian escorted a small herd of impala toward the waterhole. "We're documenting cognitive behaviors that suggest not just memory, but active problem-solving and what appears to be genuine empathy." Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on Guardian himself. The magnificent animal had spotted the 2 humans and was walking directly toward them with that same measured, purposeful gait Marcus remembered so well. "Here he comes," Marcus said softly. Guardian approached to within 3 meters and stopped, his ancient eyes studying Marcus's face with obvious recognition. The scars from the wire snares had healed completely, leaving only faint white lines. Against his gray hide, his horn, unmarked now except for that tiny nick from the poacher's chainsaw, caught the afternoon light like a beacon. The rhino made his familiar rumbling sound, the one Marcus had come to think of as Guardian's way of saying hello. Then, just as he had 6 months ago, the massive animal stepped forward and gently pressed his head against Marcus's chest. Dr. Walsh's pen froze above her notebook. "Extraordinary," she breathed. "He's initiating contact. This level of recognition, of affection, it's beyond anything we've ever documented." Marcus ran his hands along Guardian's massive head, feeling the warmth of the sun-heated skin, the solid bone beneath. The trust in that gesture still took his breath away. Here was an animal that had every reason to fear and hate humans, yet had chosen instead to form a bond that transcended species barriers. "You know what the most amazing part is?" Marcus said to Dr. Walsh, his voice thick with emotion. "I came here to save him, but I think he's the one who saved me." Guardian pulled back and looked directly into Marcus's eyes one more time. Then, with the same deliberate grace that had become his signature, he turned and walked back toward the waterhole where his self-appointed duties waited. As the sun began to set over the African bush, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Marcus understood something profound about the connection between all living things. In a world where humans and wildlife were increasingly at odds, Guardian had shown that compassion could bridge any gap, that understanding could bloom in the most unexpected places. The bond between a battle-hardened conservationist and an ancient rhino had become something larger than either of them, a symbol of hope that even in the darkest times, love could triumph over greed, and trust could overcome fear. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon against hatred isn't force, it's simply the courage to care and the wisdom to recognize when someone else is caring right back.